Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is episode 134 of Adeptus Podcastus. Joining me as always is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
Hello everyone, and hopefully my internet won't die at the moment because it is be more temperamental than a Skitari.
I thought the Skitari was supposed to follow all orders and never go wrong. Ah well. And our special guest is someone who joins us from the vaults of the Black Library, or should I say whichever anti-Black Library exists, because you wouldn't be allowed into the Eldar one with the literature this individual has written. Ladies, gentlemen, Xenos of all ages and everything in between, I give you the author of, most predominantly, The Twice Dead King, Nate Crowley.
Good evening.
How are you?
Not bad. Not bad. I've just enjoyed a delicious salad and I'm having a glass of lime cordial, so life couldn't get much better, could it?
Absolutely excellent. Well, glad to hear that. Everything all right, besides the internet, everything all right on your end, Ram?
No comment.
No, duly noted. Well, it promises to be a very interesting episode, as I'm sure many of you clicked particularly for this episode, given you saw the name. We apologise for not promoting this on the previous episode. We hadn't got it fully locked in, and I'll be honest, I forgot to use Twitter to mention the fact that Nate was coming on the show. So, sorry, those who wanted to get particular questions into the author. We'll see if we can compile a list if you want to write any in the comments, and we might pass them on and see how we go. But for those in the community who are unaware of who you are and what you do, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a resume, an introduction to who Nate Crowley is?
Sure, yeah. So I'm relatively new to Black Library. The first thing I did with them was a short story called The Enemy of My Enemy, which I think was, 2018. And that answered the age-old question of, would orcs ever ally with an Imperial faction? And it looked at how that might happen. I did another short called Emperor, which was about Bronze Age feral worlders being tricked into mining ore for a cruiser repair. And then I did the novella Severed, which was about Zandrek and Oberon, the Necron characters. And I had a blast with that. It seemed to go down quite well, and so yes. I am now doing a lot of Xenos work. So the special edition of Ghazghkull Thraka, Prophet of the War, came out back in June, and we're still awaiting the standard release of that. But in the meantime, I've got this quite hefty two-parter, The Twice Dead King, the first part of which, Ruin, just came out, and that is a big very emotional odyssey about Necrons.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think probably most people, I think the story I remember you for is Severed, definitely. I think that was one that put your name on a lot of people's radar because not many people write Necrons. And we've discussed the Ghazghkull novel on the show in the past, and all of its revelations.
And Enemy of My Enemy as well, because we adored that one scene of General Tacticus playing with the toy tank.
He's will forever be my best boy. I love him.
Excellent. But yes, we have discussed your work before, and unfortunately neither of us have read The Twice Dead King yet. It is on my to-buy list now that I'm on half-term. Once my next paycheck comes in, I'm definitely picking that one up as part of my reading bonanza that I need to go on. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where that one goes. We will see about discussing how many spoilers we get out of it, because I do want to read it, but also I want to know what happens, and I'm sure a lot of the readers want to get your insights on it as well. So there's plenty to discuss. Do you actually hobby on your own time?
I do, yeah. I took a long spell away between the early 2000s and just before, actually, I started writing for BL. But other than that, I've been collecting and painting since 1995, when I was a little fellow. So yeah, I have a vast number of Necrons that I haven't even assembled yet. I've got a decent-sized Death Skulls warband, which is much more about the conversions than being of any efficacy on the tabletop.
Excellent, as Ghazghkull should be.
This is it. Yeah, I really like kit bashing. What can I say? And yeah, I've got various odd bits of Admech, Blood Angels, and I'm thinking about getting into Sigmar. Actually,
That was my next question.
I love the Bone Reapers, the Ossiarchs. I played some games with a friend the other week, and yeah, first of all, Age of Sigmar's a good game. Actually, I really enjoyed playing it, and yeah, the models are just out of this world. I really, really love a lot of the sculpts that are being done, and yeah, I mean, what can I say? I love skeletons, so I think the Ossiarchs are a shoe-in for me.
That's fair. Yeah, I was when you mentioned Necrons, thinking, okay, AOS, vampires, and all the skeleton legion. They got a bunch of new models, but yeah, Ossiarch makes a lot of sense. Ossiarch makes a lot of sense. I hope you do enjoy your foray into the Mortal Realms if that's the route you do decide to go down. But it has been a busy couple of weeks in and out of the Mortal Realms and the 41st Millennium, though particularly it has been Age of Sigmar's run the last couple of weeks, with Harrowdeep, the new season of Warhammer Underworlds, as well as the, hopefully, I think, final wave of the Stormcast Eternals and Cruel Boys for Auric War Clans finally hitting the shelves. No, I tell a lie, the Draconith aren't out yet. They haven't got the dragons yet. But we're nearly there in terms of getting all of the starter stuff for AOS 3 on the shelf.
Been loving the Cruel Boys, actually. My friend of mine who collects them actually said it's Lord of the Rings looking orcs for Sigmar, and that is exactly the aesthetic. I think they're grand.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of people, they've had a very mixed reaction. A lot of people who very much like that Lord of the Rings aesthetic, and some who aren't so sure whether it belongs in the worlds of Warhammer quite the same, given, well, Middle-earth is its own game system and everything else. But they are very, very well designed for certain. I actually have a large Stormcast army, so I'm more looking at the other side of it. The Vanquishers and the Annihilators in particular are a couple of units that I really like the look of for my Stormcast army, if I ever go back to it. I probably won't, but if I do, then that's what I will do. And also coming out in this sort of preview that they did on the last Sunday, I think, well, there was only one place I really felt like starting today, and that was the Advent calendar.
Oh, the chibi one?
Yeah. I don't know why. I kind of just felt like we had to talk about it, and if I didn't, I'd need to keep doubling back to it.
I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping there'd be more than just the one pose in it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But as Advent calendars go, and as licensed Advent calendars go, they've at least put some effort into it. Like, they're all painted, they all don't look too terrible. I mean, the ultramarine red helmet's a bit bright in that lighting.
I mean, in fairness, the reason why I went for the red helmet ultramarine is because they already released the regular ultramarine previously in the blind packs, didn't they? So it'd be kind of redundant to have that one go out again, because otherwise people get pissed off.
This is true. It says it's got, it talks about Ultramarines, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Howling Griffin, so it's not just going to be the biggest chapters, but then you've got 24 to fill, so you kind of do have to spread the love a little bit. We don't know how much that's going to cost yet, and I get the feeling it's going to be a lot.
I'm guessing £200. No reason why, just
somehow I have a horrid feeling you're not going to be that far off.
Well, you know what my comment's going to be on this? Obviously typecasting myself already as the Xenos faction demagogue, but it would have been lovely, to see a little Eldrad in there, maybe. I know it's not characters, it's chapters, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
It would have been nice to have some variety.
What they could have done, they could have repainted one of the Space Marines into a classic Orc Tim boy.
Now we're talking. Yeah. What would be lovely, and this is nothing to do with the Advent calendar, would be just some sort of remasterings of classic second edition things. things like Tim Boys I really miss. And I bet there'd be a huge nostalgia market there. I mean, hell, do it chibi as well. Why not?
Chibi 2nd edition Ghazghkull, with his big fuzzy boots and horn helmet and power sword.
Or the implausibly, short and wide Eldar. Yeah.
Ragnar Blackmane in his high heels, platform shoes.
Yeah.
But yes, there's not the only thing coming out.
Or Dante. Oh no,
Sorry.
wait, we still got the 2nd edition Dante.
Yep. Yep, still got the old Dante.
Is that the case?
Yep.
Yep. I think it's the last official, apart from maybe Jarl Stormcaller's power armor variant.
Asriel as well.
Is Asriel 2nd edition?
Yep.
Right.
The only thing they've done to him recently to update him is to make his back banner sculpted detail. That's the only thing they've done to the actual model. They've altered the back banner to be sculpted in rather than having to be painted freehand or, print out and glued on.
Right, I see. But with that all said, there's plenty more coming out this week as well. There is the Blood Bowl star players of the Verminator, the Rat Ogre star player, as well as Wilhelm Chaney, the werewolf character, and the Acastus Knight Asterius for Titanicus, a bunch of pin badges, which actually do have some Xenos on them. Yes, they do. There are a couple of Xenos ones on them. They at least bothered with that. And the compilation of the Marnius Calgar comic, as well as a couple of audiobooks. And, well,
I would say I absolutely still adore that Rat Ogre model. I know we talked about it last episode, but it's brilliant.
It is very good. The Verminator.
The Wolfman grabbing the ball in his jaws. That's a lovely bit of physical comedy.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, Blood Bowl generally always does a very good job of combining both comedy and seriousness, as Warhammer American Football probably always will be a touch of comedy in there, but they do a good job of blending the styles.
But when are we going to get our Blood Bowl Gene Stealer? Like from that story?
We aren't.
I know we haven't. That's why I'm saying, when are we going to get him?
No, we aren't. I really don't think we are.
Well, we should.
Maybe. However, if we're going to talk about physical representations of models, I think there was only really one model that really jumped out at me this week. Instead of going for physical comedy, the Warcry team went for physical horror with the Broodmaster.
Oh, Spider-Man. Or was it Spider's
Yes.
Man?
All right, yes. This is the first preview model for Warcry Red Harvest, the upcoming expansion, reboot, whatever exactly we want to call it, for Warcry. We don't exactly know what it's going to be yet. We got the first look at the first model, the Broodmaster, and it is a really, really lovely sculpt. It's one of the flimsiest bases I've ever seen, considering it's balanced on a tiny bit of robe, but with the spiders scuttling up the cloak, the spider mask, the taloned webs, as sort of a headdress, the 6 limbs, admittedly it's not 8, but they've really gone for an aesthetic there, and I really like what they've done with the Broodmaster model.
Now, one thing I was wondering about this one, because the pictures they've shown, it looks like it has texturing on the cape, but I'm finding it hard to tell whether that's a paint effect, whether they've done some mesh as a mask, or whether there is some texturing on the model. It's really interesting. It might just be a very good paint job. But I do, if so, I like the way they've done it, because it almost looks
like a web.
Yeah, it looks like it's been spun out. It's cool.
Yeah, I couldn't say for certain either. It's really, if it's not sculpted, then it is an incredible piece of painting, especially considering that it's so patchwork. It's not uniform, it's very patchwork. So if it is painted on, then full credit to that design team member and the heavy metal team for making that look the way it does. I'm leaning towards it being sculpted, but I certainly couldn't be sure.
It looks like it'll be lovely to paint either way. There's lots of, really clear, defined fabric folds, and although there's an awful lot of limbs and stuff going on, they're not all tucked in.
No.
My least favourite models to paint are the ones where it feels like I'm doing keyhole surgery.
So every Space Marine ever.
Yes, because I'm an idiot and I assemble my models fully before painting them, just because I have no patience.
I understand.
I think a lot of us.
This fellow, it looks like it's good open sculpt.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think the main difference is one thing that's changed a lot with how GW miniatures go together, whether they're open or closed posed, is how they go together. In terms of, in the past, that cloak would have just been a component that clipped onto the back at the end. Now I get the feeling it might be that the back comes, or some of the arms come sculpted with the cloak. And so you're still going to have to do a little bit of fine digging around to get at it, unless you leave it in separate parts. And even if you do leave it in separate parts, there may be bits you can't access that easily, which is what I find with some models. It's why I've really quite enjoyed painting my Slaanesh models, actually, because they're so open and so easy to paint. Well, the demons are. The mortals can get in the bin. But the demons are very easy to paint because they're so open and old, so they're easily put together.
That's another thing I really like about the Ossiarch range as well. Bone is so much fun to paint. It's one of those, in terms of what you get out for the effort you put in, you can make Bone look phenomenal. And stuff like the big fellow who
That's gross.
stores all the skulls in his back.
The Ghazghkull Harvester.
That's right, yes. And there's all of the bones and stuff within his neck, so you've got bones within bones.
You can really do different textures or not textures, but colours and different amounts of wear and tear, all those things I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hooray for easy to access sculpts.
Agreed. And on the note of easy to access sculpts versus not, that draws me on nicely to the other new miniatures that were revealed this week, the Warhammer Day miniatures. We had a Primaris Lieutenant, because of course we did, a Primaris Lieutenant with Storm Shield, decided to be original. But we also got a Vampire Lord, who actually has an alternate build with a pet dragon on their left hand. If you would rather assemble it, instead of a pointing finger, you can give them a pet dragon. And this is a really good example of open miniature design, with the exception of all the detailing in the Space Marines armour and the extra pistol and all that stuff. Ignore that. But they're very open poses.
Oh, I'd not seen the little dragon. Hang on, I'm just looking this up
It
now.
was on the Warhammer Community Facebook page. They posted an image of the alternate build.
Oh, yes. I'm just looking at that now. Oh, that is very brooding, isn't it?
Agreed.
Extremely goth Prime Minister. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
But yes, these are the Warhammer Day 2021 miniatures. Warhammer Day itself is the 30th of October, so that is this Saturday coming, if you are in a position where you can celebrate it in your part of the world. I know we can here in the UK. I may try and get down to Warhammer World. We'll see. I'll probably have to get a ticket. But I may try and get down to Warhammer World, see if I can get myself on a gaming table or something, just to... because last year we all had to sit in our houses for Warhammer Day because it was the middle of the October lockdown that we had in the UK. And it'd be nice to spend Warhammer Day with other hobbyists, if possible. Mind you, yeah, I don't know. It's something I'd like to do.
Yeah, I made my first post-lockdown visit to Warhammer World a couple of weeks ago, and that was the day I fell in love with the Ossiarch Bonery. Tongue-tied. But yes, it was really, I hadn't anticipated quite how lovely it would feel to be just surrounded by people playing games and, to feel the gravitic pull on my wallet of the Forge World franchise.
Yeah, I understand. I've been there, done that, felt the pain. Managed to avoid buying a Titan or anything like that, but oh boy, it was close. But as for the miniatures themselves, since that's really I segued onto them, I do think they are very nice designs. I think definitely the Anasta Malkorian miniature is the better one, with or without the dragon, because it's a really different take on the Vampire Lord. Because often the Vampire Lords are very heavily armoured, or if they're more exposed, they are at the apex of their power. They're buff, powerful, killing machines. Anasta Malkorian doesn't feel like that. They feel like a vampire who is in control, but very much malnourished, driven by the exposed rib cage. It's almost like they've been feed.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
Do you remember in Warhammer Fantasy, when you had the different bloodlines for vampires, like you had the Blood Dragons, Lemians, and Von Carsteins?
Strigoi. Yeah.
This looks like a Necrarch.
Oh, you're dead right, yeah.
Huh. I hadn't clocked that. I never really paid much attention to vampire counts back in the day, so I hadn't really clocked that.
Like, if you compare it to this concept art for a Necrarch Lord.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I do. I definitely do see what you mean. Very much malnourished, almost looking.
This incredibly sinister face as well. Again, what you were saying, it's very drawn and gaunt.
Very Nosferatu.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite animalistic, isn't it?
Yeah, which really plays... I honestly think this would be a great starting character for a vampire lord in, say, an RPG or a narrative campaign like Path to Glory, where they start out weak in the midst of the hunger, barely holding on to their sanity, and malnourished and all that stuff. And as they get stronger, as they feed, as they kill, as they fight, they become one of the more powerful and imposing Vampire Lord style miniatures. For example, the one with the big mace in the Underworld kit, or the one with the bat hair if you wanted to go down that direction. It would be a really good starting character of a weak but still dangerous Vampire Lord that is barely hanging on to control, but still maintaining their airs and graces. At least that's what it makes me think of.
You've absolutely ruined me now, because I was planning on doing Path to Glory, and that is such a good idea. I may have to do a 180.
Well, at least you still get skeletons.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's true, actually. It's the best of both worlds, isn't it? Oh, I have a lot to consider. I only found out about Path to Glory a few weeks ago, actually, and it's a lovely idea. I play a lot of Total War Warhammer 2. Soon to be Total War Warhammer 3. And, my favourite part of the game, I was reading some tweets by Aaron, actually, which really struck true to me, that he always loves, feels completely glued to the first sort of 50 turns, or however long it takes in a game to get to the point where you've got more than one main army. And I absolutely agree with him, I love the process of building up from a few basic units to one, really nails army with a couple of good characters in it and a decent economy behind it. But once I'm managing sort of 4 different forces, all dealing with, various annoying border wars, I lose interest and start the game again. But Path to Glory just feels like distilling... Yeah, that early sort of snowballing where it's still quite a struggle and it's a real event if you get a decent unit. It's sort of distilled that and put it on the tabletop, and I love the structure.
Yeah, admittedly, AOS has set that system up, and then 40k refined it with Crusade, and then AOS came back and did it themselves with their version of Path to Glory in AOS 3. And so it is an AOS started system, Path to Glory over Crusade. And as much as I've never played it, because by the time I want to do it, I've already got the army I want. Whereas I think it could be really fun with a few friends to do a clubhouse Path to Glory Crusade, where what you buy and what you build and what you paint is determined by your crusade rolls, your path to glory rolls. And maybe if someone starts falling behind, you give them an extra unit as compensation, or because it's Christmas, there's a boon from the gods at Christmas where everyone gets 2 boxes or something. I think that could be a really fun way to change up the formula of a hobby project, where instead of getting to the point where I'm at, where you have a few projects on the go, they're all part completed, some of them are basically done, and the last few projects that you're on are just at the point where they're getting tedious to paint. You've got the core unit, but it's now getting tedious to add that last one or add that next couple that you need to refine your force. Whereas if you're doing it for a reason, because you're all with your friends, you're all working on the same thing, there's a real benefit to that sort of narrative system, if that's the way you like to play. If you're into competitive power gaming, it's not going to be for you, because you want this unit, this relic, that hero, etc. But if you don't really care and you just like the models because pretty, then just set yourself a list of what you want to collect and just roll on a table until you get everything you want.
Lovely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And for someone in my position who's looking to get into, one of the 2 systems, having spent, all of their hobby time in one, it's ideal as well, because it narrows down that, oh God, I could get any of these, and those situations where, you are building untenable to assemble piles, because you've got to focus, okay, these are my options, this is what I've rolled, this is what's happening. It's kind of letting fate drive for you. And that's very appealing, given the number of miniatures, you're looking at when you're coming into a system for the first time.
Yeah, a little bit of Zinj take the wheel is definitely not a bad idea unless you're playing Nurgle.
Yeah, right.
Right. Moving onwards. I've already mentioned Harrow Deep. There's not a lot to say aside from the miniatures are really nice, but we have seen them prior to this episode. They did also give the roadmap for Harrow Deep and Underworld's Season 5, which seems to include more regular expansions, I think is how they put it. So there'll be another mini set like Diachasm and Harrow Deep halfway through the edition, I believe, which will keep that game ticking along. And Rem is just posting images in the chat to draw my attention to, shall we talk about this now, because we need to talk about some 40k for a bit, please.
Yes, next batch of Joy Toy figures, which is not just Ultramarines, even though we do have some Ultramarines intercessors, but we've also got some Blood Angels Dev Company intercessors, which is a bit of a strange choice, going straight for Dev Company.
Wow, they're the best.
Yeah, but typically if you're trying to sell something like Blood Angels Assault Intercessors, like the classic red is something that most people will more likely to be recognizing and be drawn to than, oh, hang on, why have they got Blood Angel symbols but their armor's black and what's this red cross all about? Like, if you know, you know. But if you don't, you're like, explain. And then you get told the story and you're either, whoa, or oh God, no.
Yeah, it's kind of sink or swim, isn't it, with that? But I love Death Company. I said I've got a few Blood Angels. That's very much my thing is Death Company. I think they're great lore-wise. And they look great in contrast with a regular Blood Angels army, which admittedly I don't have. But I really like the look of these. I'm just taking a closer look at what they've got there.
So there's a mix of bolt rifles and pistol and chainsword. I think each of them has the option for pistol and chainsword or bolt rifle in the Death Company variant. And they all come with a bare head or helmet option as well, if you so wish. The Ultramarines ones, you do get the head swaps, but you do not get universal chainswords. I believe only the Sergeant gets a chainsword.
Oh, I didn't realise they all got their head options. That's very cool.
Certainly the Death Company ones do. I can't promise that with the Ultramarines. But certainly they do for... No, yeah, it is. All of them can go without a helmet if you wish them to.
Yeah, I was... When they first started doing these, I really... it left me quite cold, really, because, well, I'm used to little 35mm miniatures, but I'm warming to these now the range is expanding.
Yes, and it's also upsizing because they did share a preview of an upcoming project of theirs, the Invicta Warsuit.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, these action figures are not just going to stay at basic infantry, they're going bigger.
So I'm trying to work out what size is that going to be. That's
Good. Well, aren't these regular figures, the regular Space Marine figures, aren't they only like 4 inches tall?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. They've got a picture of one in another article, sort of stood
4.75,
about 4.75.
Yeah.
I know this is just showing what an absolutely debased character I am, but I look at that warsuit and my first thought is very, very cheeky Stomper conversion.
I mean, it's better than what everyone thought when they first saw the miniature was, hey, it's got a pistol and a holster. Cowboy dreadnought, y'all. That's a terrible accent. I'm sorry, America.
With the big iron on his hip.
Yes, quite so.
Or the big iron hand on his hip, I don't know. Sorry.
I have got so much spare, like, manky orc armor plating. I bought the Kill Team box set, and all of the orc terrain in that is superb. And I was thinking how good that would be for looted conversions. Like, I have a looted Baneblade I'm working on, and if I'm going to be honest with you, I bought the Kill Team box set for that terrain so I could carve it up and plate the Baneblade in it. But looking at this, I mean, that could be lovely.
Yeah, I think depending on exactly what the scale of it is, you're looking at either a Death Dread or probably a Morkanaut or a Gorkanaut, probably. It probably won't be big enough for a Stomper.
Yeah, no, you're right, because the chassis is probably going to be about, from the bottom of the hip assembly to the top, that's probably about 5 inches, isn't it? And then
the Space Marine stood up would be 5 inches, so...
Yeah, no, that would be... I reckon that would be a good count as for a Morkanaut.
Agreed. I look forward to seeing whatever you can create if and when that comes along.
I wonder if it'll be allowed to be used in tournaments, because it is technically an official Games Workshop product.
It's not a Citadel product, however.
No, exactly.
I don't think I intend to play in a tournament as long as I live, so I think I'm safe on that front.
Actually, that's a point. Do tournaments at Games Workshop have to be Citadel specifically? Because there was a time when Games Workshop models were also produced by Marauder.
I don't know. I'd have to ask someone or ask the comments who are more tournament familiar of going to Warhammer World exactly what the rules are.
Because using Skaven as an example, like when the 5th edition Skaven book came out and you had the miniatures catalogue in the back, you had some Storm Vermin which were done by Citadel which looked like absolute shit, and you had some Storm Vermin done by Marauder which looked so much better in comparison. So it's like, Citadel alone, it's like, well, I can't use the actual good Storm Vermin, for God's sake.
I never realised they were a different manufacturer. You learn something every day.
It was a while ago. Storm Vermin got an update in 7th edition, so it's not the case now.
Yeah, this was back in the 90s still.
Oh yeah, I was all 40k all the time back then, so it would have passed me by.
However, I think the award for most bonkers kit bash conversion I've ever seen, there was an article a few days ago of someone who turned their car into a Night Titan.
Oh, God, yeah.
Ooh, was this the store in Thailand?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. The wheel mounts on the shoulders, really, really clever.
Literally, the entire shoulders is made out of an old Volkswagen, I believe. And they've created I can't tell exactly what the scale is in terms of, I think it's about, judging by their height stood in front of it, about 12 foot, give or take, recreation of Canis Rex. And it's roughly half the size of an in-world knight. Oh, sorry, no, that's the shoulder arm is half the size of the knight, sorry. It doesn't say exactly how tall it is on the article, but it is an incredibly impressive piece of architecture that also lights up.
Insert your joke about it being, hey, it's about the same size as a Primarch.
I was in Tokyo a couple of years ago, and they've got a full-scale Gundam there at the massive Gundam shop.
Yeah.
I remember looking at that and thinking, oh, it would be lovely if someone did this with a Titan. And this is one step closer to that being a reality.
Well, have you ever been to, I don't know if they still got it in their storefront anymore, the Games Workshop in Manchester, because they had an Imperator Titan in their window.
Oh, really?
It was about I don't have a picture of it to hand, but you could look it up quite easily. It's the one that was in the Arndale Centre in Manchester. They had an Imperator in their window, and it was about 6 foot tall.
There is a wonderful history of one-off Imperator Titan builds.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
There's a lovely article to be written someday about that, because ever since, I think, the Imperator Titan was the... I talk a bit about this in the afterword to Ghazghkull. The very first thing that caught my eye was the Games Workshop in Beckenham in London, and I saw it was Titan Legions, the incredible box art with the Mega Gargant fighting the Imperator, and I just took one look at that. That's a church with a gun, and it really. I had to know more. So yeah, Imperator Titans have always been absolutely emblematic for me, and it's amazing how many times the Imperator Titans, we see physically rather than in artwork, are one-off builds by people who just love the idea. There's been no one can agree still how big they are, which I love.
Well, I mean, Titan height consistencies has been something we discussed very recently, wasn't it, Ram?
Yeah, most notably pointing out that one piece of art of that Reaver Titan that's like taller than an entire city. And that's just a Reaver Titan.
That classic Warlord, the first time they ever used the art for the new Warlord Titan, sort of the more sort of blunt, angular one, I think it was used on the cover of an Inferno magazine back in the late 90s, and that's one where it's sort of swinging its arm round and it's next to a mountain.
Oh, the one... Yeah, was that the one from the Titan graphic novel?
Yeah, and it looks like God's older brother. I mean, it's huge.
Imperius Dictatio, that's the one.
Yeah, love that bit of art. It's, there's two sort of schools of Titan design. There's the really sort of Baroque, ornate, very 40k church with legs. And then I really liked that offshoot design school of thought where, it's almost more Imperial Army, Imperial Guard rather, with the sort of the military greens and big rivets and blunt plates and looking quite pragmatic and functional. Very cool.
Akin to like one of those walking tanks you see in an anime or something.
Yeah, it's more that flavour, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that the sort of the mass-produced function over form philosophy is very Imperium of Man, just as much as the too much detail, too many skulls is. It's just two different flavours of the same madness. I love it.
Yes, we'll be getting back to Lehman Russ's later, I believe.
Oh, that one page you posted on Twitter, Ram.
Yeah.
That one page.
Masterpiece.
It's like amazing things like Chris Wright doesn't have a high opinion on Lehman Russ's.
Yes, I think before we dive into all things literary, I think I would not be doing my job if I didn't mention the most recent article on Warhammer Community at the time of recording. The Christmas Squig plushie. I know, but I had to mention it.
How did I miss this one?
It happened today, like a couple of hours ago.
Oh.
So they've started to reveal the range of Christmas merch for the year. You've got an Imperial Ultramarine stocking, a Chaos stocking, and at the moment a Reindeer squig. Rain squig. Squig deer. I can't come up with a good pun.
I am just experiencing that as we speak. Okay.
Yes, it does say that there will be plenty more coming from the Christmas range later this year. I'm assuming there'll be army boxes and Christmas jumpers and such. But at the moment, they've revealed a Christmas squig, and I'm still not sure what to feel about this.
We got plushy Nurglings, we got plush Christmas squig. What are we going to get? We're going to get like one of those, like a slash body pillow or something next. I don't know. How are we going to? Where are we going to be branching out into?
No.
This squig, it's like Jason Statham's spirit has been trapped in a soft toy. It's the misaligned eyes and the expression of existential terror, but also a lot of anger. I think I like it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to buy it, but it is undeniably a thing.
It looks like something Wib would get.
Yes.
Yes, I suspect so.
Hi,
I'm
Wib.
going to have to close the tab now. I can't keep looking at its face. It's looking back at me through the screen.
Mm.
Now, the last bit of news I wanted to dwell on actually leads into all things Black Library, as it talks about an upcoming Black Library novel called Day of Ascension by, and I quote, legendary sci-fi writer and Arthur C. Clarke award-winning Adrian Tchaikovsky.
So Adrian's actually a friend of mine. Before I was writing for Black Library, I was writing conventional science fiction, and we used to sort of hang out at conventions and stuff, because I was a baby author there as well. I'd only been writing for 2 years before I started at Black Library, and he's given me a lot of sort of good advice over the years, and I'm a huge fan of his work as well. I think he's a bloody brilliant pick for this. Obviously biased, but have you read any of his sci-fi?
I haven't.
Unfortunately.
So he's actually, funnily enough, one of the things we connected over is he is fascinated by alien modes of thought, and he definitely sort of the book that really made him a big deal was Children of Time, which is a book, half of which is told from the point of view of spiders that have been left on a freshly terraformed world and just been left to their own devices to evolve for a few million years. It's the sort of accelerated evolution, so it's actually, I think, a few tens of thousands. But you get the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And he has... so he's a zoologist originally. He knows beasts back to front, and especially invertebrates. So he really, really knows his stuff. He did a phenomenal amount of research for that book, and he gives such a compelling picture of how a spider with human-level sapience might view the world. It is completely alien, but it's at the same time immensely accessible and compelling. And that's with spiders. So what he might do with gene stealer cults from that perspective is really interesting to me, because Tyranids are, the least accessible mentally in terms. There's always jokes, how would you do a Tyranid POV book? And obviously, gene stealer cultists are not Tyranids, but they are on the edge of that world, and there is some odd cognitive stuff going on. It's a really tricky brief, but he's definitely got the skill set.
So what it talks about in this article is the idea of a Magos biologist who hears about a gene stealer cult and tries to bend them to his own ends, by the sounds of it, rather than, it's from the perspective of the Magos. This is a Mechanicus Magos trying to use a gene stealer cult to bring down the leadership of this Forge world called Marod. But we also, talking about your sort of spider perspective of someone at the bottom of the evolutionary food chain almost, you also get to see the cult through the eyes of one of the adherents. So we'll be writing both about a tech cultist seeking to manipulate an external force, whilst also seeing in through the eyes of the adherents, and at the bottom of that external force being the Genestealer cultist, as the day where the Tyranids arrive gets closer and closer and closer. So I agree. It's going to be an interesting thing, because you talk about his work with zoology, clashing that and there's biological, I can get my words out, biological clout up against the technological, cold, mechanical viewpoint of the Adeptus Mechanicus and their, and I quote, palatial comforts. I really am looking forward to this. I hadn't really looked into it when I read I saw the article, but now we've discussed it, I'm really looking forward to seeing this when it comes out next year.
I would, to anyone listening, I would call that a must buy, to be honest. I think the match of the brief and the author is really spot on for that. And it's, well, I mean, just the premise is great. And as you say, the contrast there, there's some really, really interesting and underexplored elements of the lore to play with there. It's one of those books where, well, no, actually, it's probably the book where I'm simultaneously really, really envious because I'd love to write it, but also really, really happy because I'm absolutely sure Adrian would do a better job. It's good. I'm pumped.
Excellent. Now, there's one question I always like to ask an author when they come on the show, and that's the question of the project you most want to see but don't want to write yourself. Sort of like the project because I'm sure there's a load of briefs you would love to write, but there's probably some briefs that you're like, I want someone to write it, but I don't want it to be me. And I wonder if there's a particular project that you think, I'd love somebody other than me to write that.
That is a really good question, and I am probably the worst person you could ask, because as soon as I think of an impossible idea, I really, really want to work on it. So, like a Necron novella about friendship. It's that is my whole thing. Is working out really, really odd concepts and trying to work out ways to do them. So it's hard to think of something I'd like to see, but not also like to have a bash at.
That's fair.
Yeah, interesting one though. I'll think on that. If I come up with a good answer, I'll blurt it out later.
Awesome. And it's also really nice to talk to someone who is also a Xenos author, because obviously we've talked to people like Aaron, we've had Gav, we've had Josh Reynolds, we've had Robbie McNiven, a lot of people who cut their teeth on the Guard, the Space Marines, the Sororitas, and for me particularly as a pure Xenos player, I dabbled in Guard for a year and then gave it up very, very quickly. It's really refreshing to see someone who actually has got this idea of, yep, Xenos, that's going to be my defining thing, is I write Xenos, give me a Xenos brief and I'll write it. It's kind of refreshing.
I've made it very clear to Black Library that I will happily take on, any faction, and that's definitely where my enthusiasm is. That's not to say I wouldn't like to write more Imperium POV stuff, especially Astra Militarum. I've got quite a few ideas knocking around for more sort of conventional Guard stories. And Ecclesiarchy, Sororitas, I find that really interesting because I love the various extreme and weird models of faith. So that appeals. But I think I would probably have a bit of a hard time writing, an inverted commas straightforward Space Marines narrative, where obviously the Space Marines and then the Space Marines. So never say never on that front. But there's just so many Xenos stories that haven't been told.
Yeah.
That, to me at least, it feels like there are so many ideas I want to pursue there that I would have a hard time running out. And, I mean, fingers crossed, I'll keep getting commissioned. But there's just, when you look at the actual body of Xenos POV stories, there is very little, and much of what there is has been in the last few years. So it does feel, there's everything to play for.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, as you may know, I'm a Tau player first and foremost. And whilst it's been absolutely wonderful getting the Farsight novels from Phil Kelly, it's just like, okay, I've read those now, and I've read the other bits and bobs, and like, can I have some more? That'd be nice. But yeah, I understand. You've also got to go a little bit with what sells and what interests the author at the time, because obviously, I'm not going to say you can't write a project you aren't interested in, because people can do that, but you're more likely to put the time and the grind and get the best project possible out of a product that you believe in. I mean, that's true of almost anything. What you believe in is what you get the best results with, generally speaking, at least. It's
strange, though. I mean, you are right. But one pleasure I really find with writing for a faction I haven't written about before is the potential it has for getting me interested. So when I was first commissioned to do a Necron novella, I had always found them not like a boring faction, but quite one note. Like, okay, they're trudging robot skeletons. That's what they do. And then I got thinking about them, and when you're going to write anything from a non-human point of view, you have to do a lot of thinking about, okay, so in practical terms, what is that like? And with Necrons, once I started thinking about that, they just absolutely, if you'll excuse the irony of the phrase, came alive to me. There's a lot of fun in that, being given or being pointed towards something. How do you feel about that? And thinking, well, not much really. But then going away, and I really obsessively research and take loads and loads of notes that never really get used in the writing. They're just me sort of exploring the ideas. And then before long, I find that I'm completely obsessed with something. So, it's... I'm not writing anything at the moment on this front, but you speaking about Tau, I really want to do a Kroot story at some point. I love me some Kroot.
Yeah, I would, if I had the time and the ideas and the funds to commission that, I would probably commission that. But it's not my place to do so. It's Black Library's. But if anyone at Black Library happens to be listening, then consider that a ringing endorsement for please do a Kroot novel. That would be absolutely, or a novella at least. That would be lovely.
Oh, I mention it absolutely every time I meet with them. So one day.
You could do a parody of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Very Hungry Kroot.
Well, I really want to do a spin-off of... do you remember in Ghazghkull there was the extremely unorthodox Kroot that had been captured by Inquisitor Falx?
The fish.
Yes, yeah. Funnily enough, there was about 3,000 words cut from that novel. Actually, it might not have been that much. But there was a lot more going into the backstory of that creature, and talking with my editor, just like, let's put that aside. Could be useful one day. So that's a story I'd like to do.
Fair enough.
And I think that's a perfect segue into Rem asked Nate a bunch of questions about the Ghazghkull novel because we got confused.com.
Shoot.
So one thing I do want to ask, what was your inspiration to add a Ogryn Psyker?
So this was a psychic awakening thing, because it had been made a big deal of, the psychic awakening. And obviously there have been texts that have come out dealing specifically with that. But I felt, I was thinking, okay, so what's happening in the setting at the moment? And what's, what could have interesting implications that haven't really been explored so far. And so that was one thing that went into it. The other thing is there have been so many Inquisitors in in Black Library stories, and so many retinues with weird oddities in, especially with an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor. You've got license to have some really weird stuff. And I was thinking, okay, so how can I do something that hasn't been done before, that is very odd and unusual, but actually ties into what's happening in the setting right now. And the third strand that went into it is one of the themes running all through that book, which is the nature of objective truth and subjective truth, and what people in the setting believe, because to think anything otherwise would invite madness or getting shot and things like that. So, it is known. One of the things everyone knows about Ogryns is they're really thick. They are thick as pig shit, loyal, lovable, and immensely strong. So I thought, okay, what if all of that, but one had psychic ability? Or what if Ogryns aren't always as thick as everyone thinks? It is just that is the role they have been put in Imperial society. And that is how Ogryns have to be thought of in order for the war machine to work as it does. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting? So those are the three things that went into it. Trying to do something that hasn't been done before, looking at the psychic awakening and what odd things that might be doing that haven't happened before in the setting, and then looking at the nature of subverting what are thought of as being obvious universal rules. And she was fun. She was a lot of fun to write.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when you put it that way, sort of like, it is one of those things for people like myself and Rem who read a lot of literature. We do go in with a lot of presumptions, like, this is this happens, this character will be like this faction will behave in such a way, that when we see these preconceptions flipped or twisted outside of our normal reckoning, of like, oh, okay.
I was really delighted listening to you guys discuss it on this podcast, actually. It's like, what do we do with this? And Ogryns like, okay.
When you think about it logically,
the idea of, okay, how big is the Imperium? Freaking enormous. How many worlds produce Ogryns? A flipping lot. Genetic diversity says, therefore, logically, there had to be an Ogryn Psyker. There had to be. By the laws of logic, the random nature of the universe and the development of the Psyker gene in the 40k universe aside, but by the laws of the 40k universe plays by, and the rate of Psyker development in humanity, combined with the Psychic Awakening, on reflection, there being an Ogryn Psyker just had to happen. And it just so happened that in this case, it was put to literature.
The other thing that it did, which wasn't one of my inspirations going in, but which I was really happy with, is that anything you can do in a 40k story to make things even more tragic than they already are is an automatic win, right? Like, the more ironic miseries you can pile up in that setting, the more 40k it is. And the idea that there are, what if Ogryns are pretty much, capable of, they're obviously cognitively different from baseline humans, but what if they're not actually necessarily that thick at all? It's just, they are just raised in massive penal camps and things and just sent to do mining or fighting. And no one thinks to even teach them the alphabet because everyone knows Ogryns are thick. Like, what if there's actually quite a lot of Ogryns that are not? And that would be incredibly sad and unfair and brutal. And that's 40k, baby.
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit of an odd comparison to make, the super mutants from Fallout, who in Fallout 3 onwards particularly are often characterized as being big, dumb, green idiots. Except when you talk to people like Marcus in Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas, or that one who wears a wolf in Fallout 4 or something, there are smart ones. And Forks in Fallout 3, who was locked up for not being a big green dumb idiot.
Yeah,
So on.
if you just raise people with the expectation, right, you've just got to be a brute. Like, your whole job is just to run at the biggest thing you can run at, shouting at the top of your lungs. And if you do that well, you will be fed more and treated decently. So, that is your objective in life. You're not really going to become an intellectual.
No.
So, yeah, interesting. I'm sure it pissed a lot of people off as well. But hopefully, if they carried on reading past the point where it was introduced, it sort of paid for its own lunch as an idea.
I like that phrase. I'm going to keep that one in the back pocket. Yeah. The bit that really stuck with me is the infinitely respawning Makaris. The idea that, okay, because obviously going in, I always had the 4th edition Codex story of Makari the Grot got to such an age, then got sat on and fed to a Squiggoth. Then it was changed in 6th edition that Makari was Ghazghkull's favourite flag waver until he got sat on and fed to a Squiggoth. And suddenly we have infinitely respawning Makaris because Ghazghkull just said so.
Yep.
And I did a video as well.
Yeah. Did you mention something like the idea of the Makari accidentally dying and some Grotch saying, no, this one's Makari now, so that we don't annoy Ghazghkull type thing? Was that something we made up, or is that something that was written? My brain is struggling.
So the way I was thinking about that, and one of the other things Ghazghkull was, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a biography. It's, it's the story of Ghazghkull's life. And it's not just about the character in the setting, it is about the character as a meme, I guess, as a cultural artifact that we've all been familiar with for decades. And so the book is in many ways sort of a love letter to, the history of 40k and the role Ghazghkull's played in it as a game. And the book refers to, there is a phase in the book where he is very clearly the 2nd edition miniature. And then I think it was 4th edition was the next one.
Yeah.
And then the current incarnation.
3rd edition.
Oh, was it third? Sorry.
It was 3rd, yeah.
Yes, that was middle-sized Ghazghkull, wasn't it? And yeah, funnily enough, the whole thing about objective versus subjective truth and how orcs look at the idea of objectivity and cognitive dissonance and whether you can hold more than one mutually exclusive truth in your head at the same time came from those conflicting stories about Makari. Because when a setting gets old and venerable, there are retcons and tangles and contradictions.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, right. You guys know.
Oh, we know.
With Makari, it was just what a perfect vehicle for exploring that from an in-setting perspective. That the orcs do have these conflicting stories and understandings, and they're all true. They are just subjectively to the orcs. All of these things about Makari are true, and it's a matter of who you're asking and how much clout they have. And Ghazghkull has so much clout, psychically speaking and religiously speaking, and just being bloody massive, that if he... because to be massive as an orc is to be massive mentally and physically. There is no... Yeah, the brains brawn ratio is really interesting with orcs. Let's put it that way. But yeah, if the idea that if Ghazghkull proclaims a grot to be Makari, his banner waver, then that is what they are. And of course, in Makari's telling of his story, there are occasions where he lived for days, weeks, or even years as an ordinary grot before being, touched by the holy hand of the boss and told, you're Makari now, at which point suddenly has a whole different set of memories and, to some extent, a different personality as well.
Yeah, it's like, I'm Makari. It's almost like you had that video game screen of additional memories unlocked because yours carry on the genetic lineage.
Well, I was thinking, and it never says anything definitively, because as a rule, when writing for Black Library, it's always easier not to say things definitively. But there was a lot in there about the Great Green and the fungal / mycelial secondary biology that orcs have, which obviously has some sort of psychic component. And what is the Great Green? Is it something like the Immaterium? Is it just how orcs think of the capacity of their fungal elements to store psychic and mental information? What is it, like a big cloud computing thing almost made out of mushrooms? There's all sorts of weird stuff implied, and there is somewhere that because the orc belief in reincarnation, that they are they die and they are vomited back into reality by Gork and Mork. The fact that mech boys come into the world knowing not just how to build a machine, but to build like a bone crusher or I have forgotten all of the names of the new vehicles because they all have ridiculous names that I love.
Wagon.
Yeah, so you've got mechs on opposite sides of the galaxy building identical or near identical Boomjacker Snazwagons. How do they know? Where is that information coming from? Where is their STC equivalent? And so I'm really interested in the idea of there being some way by which information / memories / even consciousness is stored by the great mass of all orcoids.
Yeah, because we sort of thought of it at the time when we were reading it as like, this is like the orc's version of the hive mind.
Yeah, because there's no shared consciousness, but there's definitely,
ideas.
Yeah, you can't look at the way orcish culture works and not realize there's some kind of shared well of stuff that everyone is drawing on.
Maybe it's just like orc Facebook.
What gruesome thoughts. Yeah, no, I didn't want to say anything definitive about it, like I say, because I think apart from anything else, it ruins all the fun if you set out a mechanism. But, there's definitely something going on there. And Makari is, every time he dies, he's being tipped back into something. And then Ghazghkull is pouring himself a fresh mug of Makari every time he needs him.
He's basically just a green Celestine at this point.
I like that.
That living saint.
So I've got really attached to Makari. He's so vile.
But are we likely to get a sequel novel where Ghazghkull teams up with Nazdreg for the Pacina campaign?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
It would, yeah.
I wouldn't imagine it would be a sequel because that was a one-off in the character novel about Ghazghkull. Would I like to do more stories about Ghazghkull? Definitely. Nazdreg, you will have noted, didn't get any screen time.
I did. I was very disappointed about that. I was like, "Oh, where's the Pacina campaign? I like that."
Yeah, no, believe me, man. My first draft for that book was about 30,000 words longer, which was my fault. I had been commissioned at the length the book was, and I just got I was utterly in love with it as a project, and I just wrote way too much. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I felt rather than be scattershot and have a little bit about everything that happened to Ghazghkull, I'd concentrate on his sort of greatest hits, I guess, but look at them from an angle that hadn't been explored to death before. So you'll notice it actually skips over a lot of the action of Armageddon because that's been told 100 times by brilliant writers.
Yeah, so with Golgotha.
Yeah, right. Chains of Golgotha is magnificent, and I didn't want to try and redo that. So, the end result is there are more stories to be told. And Grotznik, I think, has a lot more to say as well. I think Grotznik's really interesting. And then obviously Octarius is all kicking off at the moment. So, Yeah. Long story short, I would love to go back and do more connected things. I think Fawkes and Hendrickson got some legs on them as well. They were a fun pair to write. They're not definitely dead at the end of that book. So
yeah. It's interesting you're talking about all these ideas that you play with, the idea of these, playing with the idea of the retcons and the character dichotomies and all of these different things. When you set out to start a project, obviously you're commissioned to write X, or you pitch, I want to write Y. Do you sort of start from the themes and then write the plot, or do you often write the plot and then think, oh, what layer can I put onto this cake? I suppose it might change project to project. I'm just curious because I'm sure there's a lot of budding writers or people who've tried to write for open submissions before, and I just wondered what sort of the mindset of how you write is.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question, and I'll try and answer it succinctly and decently. It does vary a little bit from project to project, but I suppose actually to mention Twice Dead King, what I thought of with that was I wanted to write a story where the Necrons were on the back foot, and I suppose I like to think of the core subversion that's there, the hook that makes it different from what people are maybe used to or expecting. And then it's working out, once you've worked that out, you can do both things in parallel. You can work out what your plot is, what are the sequence of events that's going to make that subversion discussable, make you able to play with it. And then it also, because if you know what that subversion is, that gives you the thematic core of your book. Okay, I'm looking at that. And once you know what the themes are you want to explore, so for example, in Twice Dead King, Necrons being on the back foot, it sort of spiders out from that. So if you imagine a spider diagram, on the one hand, you've got, okay, so tonally, this is a Gothic novel. It's that classic 19th century thing of a great house in decline with a terrible secret at its heart. And that's one element. And then you've got, okay, so what kind of character fits into this? Maybe an exile, someone who's on the edge of things, in the worst part of a situation in decline. And then, theme-wise, you've got, okay, so I really wanted to explore the Flayer curse and all the psychological elements of that. And so you start building that in. I think it's once you've worked out what your core challenge to the orthodoxy of the setting is, I suppose, or your core challenge to the expectations of a reader. It's that Ogre and Psyker thing. Obviously, that wasn't the central point of Ghazghkull, but, if you work out what is the rock that the reader's mind is going to run into coming into the story, and it's going to, sort of jolt them and engage them. And then you work out from that, and everything else, hopefully, flows from that point.
I see what you mean, because sometimes I can't think of a particular novel when I say this, but you find sometimes you get a piece of literature and you just read through it, and it's like, yep, and then you put it down. And it's not that it was... Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I totally see what you mean. Like, there are formulas.
Yeah, and it's not that any of it's bad. It was very well written. The plot's good. It pays off everything it sets up. It's got a good antagonist, a good protagonist, good ideas. But it's just there. Like, it does exactly what it says on the tin. And it's there. Like, a recent example of something that didn't do that for me was Caiaphas Cain. Dead Men Walking, I think. Where they sanctified an area by bombarding it with basilisk shells loaded with holy water. And I just, what? But it stuck with me, and thus I wanted to talk about it on the podcast, because when we read as much as we do, we need to have 2 or 3 core points of this happened, this happened, this happened. Well, Rem's an encyclopedia, he can recite an entire book from scratch, but I need 2 or 3 core sticking points that I want to talk about that, I want to talk about that, I want to talk about that, as well as the overall synopsis. And I need something to stick with me. And those roadblocks, those things you bump along that think, hang on, that's a bit jarring, but then it totally makes sense when you actually stop and think about them because you've stopped and thought about them. Those bumps in the road are almost the thing that makes you remember the book, almost.
Yeah, because rather than being sort of antagonistic towards the reader, you're sort of saying, okay, look, just chill. Just stop here for a second and have a look around. You might like it. It does sort of force you to, it does force an engagement. And, there is nothing wrong with just a fucking page turner, Like, there is an immense craft involved in just writing a really pacey, good, like, exciting story to a formula. And actually, that's something I'd probably say isn't one of my strengths. That really takes a lot of skill and experience to do well. But yeah, I really like telling the kind of stories that I suppose look at the underneath of a setting, or look at things from another perspective. Because that's how my imagination enjoys gnawing at things, I guess.
Oh, that's understandable. That's very understandable.
And that's the thing with 40k for me, why I've always loved it, the sort of conversations I've had with other hobbyists. And in fact, it goes right back to Enemy of My Enemy, the first story. I remember, having conversations when I was 12. Because I think in second edition, maybe even later editions, you could have like Orc ally detachments. If you were playing Guard or something. And I remember having raging arguments. Yeah, how would this work? Yeah, no way would they do that. No, they wouldn't do that. Well, no, maybe if there was a big enough threat. You have those really cool discussions where you take your toolkit of tropes and rules and concepts from the setting, and you sort of lawyer each other, trying to build a hypothetical situation in which this weird or cool or unusual thing could happen.
Yeah, we've done that plenty of times on this program.
Right? That's one of the great bits of fun in such a big, complex, messy setting.
Agreed. Sorry, Rem, I feel like your entire Let's Talk About the Ghazghkull novel got completely taken over there. Sorry.
That's all right. What else was I going to say? I was going completely out my bloody head now.
That's all right. It happens. Might well come back to you. Well, I would, at this point, segue into something I've been reading, but I haven't, because as much as it's been half term, it's mostly been getting my breath back and recharging after the long half term. So I haven't had a chance to pick anything up to read yet. I think I'm looking to do, obviously, Twice Dead King, and we will discuss that on a future episode of the podcast in full. We'll do the spoilers and all of that, of course, because, well, we're talking to the author. We wouldn't get him on if we didn't think it was a good book worth talking about, and so on. And I'll see where I go from there. I don't know what's been on your shelf this week, Rem. I don't know if did Warhawk land on your desk?
It did, yeah. I'm about a third of the way through. Honestly, not that much has really happened in it so far. It's just basically just build up. Though we did give that author that fantastic one whole page run of just Chris Ray just ripping into the Lehman Russ battle tank, saying how shit it is.
I'm just going to let Rem take the wheel on this one.
Because I actually posted the page to my Twitter the other day. Basically, long and short of it is an entire page saying how terrible it is. It's a death trap. Whoever designed it was either a moron or a sadist or both. It was too tall.
Do a little reading of a couple of paragraphs from.
Say again, sorry?
Would you mind if I just read a couple of paragraphs from that?
Go ahead.
Because I love it.
Go ahead.
And yeah, I adore Chris's work. I'm just going to grab the tweet. So you might have a couple of seconds of dead air to edit out, but hopefully not too much. It was only a couple of days ago. Here we go.
It's all right.
So I don't know what the preceding sentence was, but it begins with, "Was it shit? The Lehman Russ was a rolling death trap. Its tall profile was so notoriously awful that no commander ever wanted to be squadron leader. The only thing big enough to shield a Lehman Russ during operations was another Lehman Russ. So better to keep the command unit ahead of you for as long as you could. Its fragile tracks were exposed and its arm was a mess of easy-to-hit vertical planes. The standard pattern sponson bulges just presented another flat edge to destroy, another reason to be glad not to have them. Interior was noisy and prone to bursting into flames whenever a loader coughed too loudly, and if you were truly unlucky enough to have those sponsons, there was only one escape hatch, right at the top of the main turret, so the chances of getting out alive in case of all too likely disaster were practically zero. No, whoever had designed the Lehman Russ, Asker had always assumed it wasn't actually the Primarch of the Sixth, was a moron, or a sadist, or both. The only things it had going for it were cheapness, mechanical reliability, and a certain rugged survivability in numbers. The design was so brutally simple, the Imperium was able to churn them out by the million. It mattered less that each individual unit was a study in self-harm when you could overwhelm a battlefield with hundreds of them. And a front-mounted las cannon at least could keep firing as long as its power packs held a charge, which made running out of shells somewhat less of a disaster. Still, all in all, the crews had few illusions about the tanks they rode into war. Death boxes, they were called, and home wreckers, and other earthier names too. Infantry troopers would occasionally look askance at them, jealous of all that thick armour they had around them. But a Lehman Russ tanker knew how fragile it all was, and how going out to a las blast was far preferable to being burned alive or buried under a wall of mud or suffocated by trapped engine smoke. What a page.
Thank you, Chris Wade.
Now that is a lovely bit of meta commentary as well, because that's looking at the design of a tabletop miniature, but then thinking about that entirely in setting. That's why that's magic for me.
Yeah, and given that the Lehman Russ is based loosely on First World War tanks, the original tanks, which were unreliable, broke down all the time, got stuck, ran out of ammo, were pretty easy to destroy if you knew what you were doing. Well, maybe not. But given how rubbish the First World War tanks were compared to modern day tanks, which the Baneblade takes more of a design inspiration from, it makes sense. In our minds, we understand why the tankers think that way. And there's enough literature out there of Lehman Russ crews dying horrifically to know we understand, yeah, a Lehman Russ tanker can go out like that. We've seen it happen a lot, and we understand that.
There is that, it's lovely comparison to the Baneblade as well, like you say, because, you know, those are like big, serious, like good designs from a better time. Whereas, yeah, the Lehman Russ, it's mass-produced shit for a nightmare world.
Pretty much. Makes you think, how good is Armour 14 really? Nah. And then you think, how many times have I got stuck on difficult terrain and broke my treads? Back when difficult terrain rolls were a thing. Think, how horrid must that actually be for your tank crew to pop a tread on a difficult terrain roll? All this nonsense.
That's one thing I miss, actually, from the old rules. That was good for narrative play, wasn't it?
Agreed.
I was going to take the moment to appreciate the fact that Chris Ray seems to be as sick as the Alfarius memes as everyone else.
Oh, yes, I saw this as well. This was brilliant.
It's like, I am out, the Space Marine stated. Don't even think about saying that again, or so help me, I'll open the bloody doors and kill us all.
Just sick of the I am Alfarius joke. It's nice when there's just a touch of, not fourth wall breaking, that's not fourth wall breaking commentary, but just meta commentary with logical in-universe reasons for saying something that we believe to be meta commentary. It's a hard tightrope to walk, I bet, but it's really fun when you see it come through.
Oh yeah.
Can I make a little confession on that front?
You like the Alfarius memes, don't you?
Oh no. In Twice Dead King Reign, which is the part 2 yet to come out, there is a scene where a character is having their necrodermis replated, and it is mentioned that the protocol in their dynasty is to apply the material in 2 thin coats. And it's not phrased in that way, but it's very clearly stated that the correct way to apply the outer layer is in 2 thin coats, and that made me smile.
I bet Duncan will be smiling as well once he reads that.
And bless his angelic smile, so hopefully he does.
Oh, that's very good. It's almost a shame we've given that away on this program. I love the exclusive that we've just got, but I almost wish I'm almost deprived at the moment of reading it and clocking it myself now. Like, that's good, because that would have literally sent me cackling for a solid 5 minutes if I'd have read that blind.
Well, it'll be a little while before it comes out, so hopefully you'll forget, and then you'll stumble across it, and that can be a little rock for you to trip over.
Agreed.
Though in fairness, Tag, there might have been a chance you might have completely been oblivious to it, because remember when we both read Dawn of Fire, and I was at that scene, I said, was this guy dabbing? Because the way he was described as bowing, his left arm held up high, his right across his chest, head down low.
But that's not dabbing. If you hold your arm across your chest and hold your right arm outwards and bow, that's just an elegant bow. That's not dabbing. That's just an elegant bow. You think of a performer, instead of putting one arm across and just bowing, they just put their outer arm outwards while their arms go across the chest.
Again, that's a dab.
I know it could be phrased like dabbing, but to me, it's where you put your elbow. In the picture you've just shown me, that's where they put their elbow. If their arms across the chest rather than up at the elbow, then that's not dabbing. That's just bowing elegantly. I've bowed like that without dabbing.
I'll thank both of you gentlemen to remember that Zandrek is the canonically dabbing character in that, his miniatures dabbing.
This is not entirely inaccurate.
Even so, it's more amusing to assume it's dabbing in the first place, because it was sort of like an ancient custom that was quite cringeworthy. So, cringeworthy custom, that description sounds like a dab to me.
All right. Okay, fine, maybe. But I do read very quickly. Like, I can't read slowly. Or if I do, I normally will end up reading 3 pages and then going back one, because I need to catch up. My brain needs to catch up with my eyes. So I do end up missing the little details like that sometimes.
I can only imagine what would happen if you read through another Peter Veyavari book. If you at that speed, you'd be so confused. You'd be like, what the hell's going on?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
But yeah, not really too much else to report on Warhawk. Again, it's just setting up events towards, that's gonna, all the shit's gonna kick off later, basically. It's just building up to it. So it's...
Yeah.
Oh, there is actually one thing I will point out, so might want to call this a spoiler warning.
Okay.
But there's a scene where Erda, the mother of the Primarchs, she's basically reminiscing, thinking about, Dron Grammaticus and Letus, like, oh, have I done the right thing, send them off? Yeah, I'm sure everything will be fine. She goes to bed one night, notices there's a noise, she wakes up, standing at the foot of her bed. Hello, grandmother, we need to talk. It's fucking Erebus.
What?
Erebus is on Terra now, because it turns out...
is he physically there, or is he dream projecting?
He's physically there. Because do you remember the last book, when Alanius Pius and the others were being chased?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that thing chasing them was Erebus.
Oh, joy.
Yes. So it's like, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm assuming you haven't got to the rest of that conversation. That was like the chapter ender, and we'll come back to it
Pretty
later.
much, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But this is where he just goes like, hello, grandmother. Which makes me feel he knows about Erda. So, like, who else knows about Erda? Because, like, it seems like Erda was supposed to be this big secret kind of thing. So, like...
I'd assume the Chaos Gods know.
Well, yeah, considering she was responsible for, like, having the Primarchs yeeted into space.
Yeah, so the Chaos Gods know, and Erebus is sort of the conduit of the Chaos Gods.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense, yeah. Actually, no, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Horus knows. That might be interesting if Horus knows or not. But Erebus knowing makes sense as the first to fall, being shown the truth of, wait, if the Emperor is willing to keep such a secret as the Primarch's mother from the Primarchs, then what else is he hiding? Like being as a way to turn Erebus?
I suppose.
As a wider concept? I don't know.
It just seems to kind of go against... do you remember in First Heretic when Aglatal and the Serrated Sun basically went on their pilgrimage into the Eye of Terror and they saw how the Primarchs were scattered, and it turns out that it was them scattering the Primarchs because of their actions, kind of thing. It's like that kind of flies in the face of it. So call it a retcon, call it a lie from demons, call it whatever you like.
Yeah, it could have been them almost being seen to be interacting with events in the past when they actually weren't. Who knows?
I did a video on that as well.
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably close the spoilers there. Just a quick little thing for Warhawk. Yeah. We will come back to that probably next episode or the episode after, depending on how long it takes to chunk through the rest of it.
Yeah. But I can't believe Bryan Danielson appeared, and I was just mad. Sorry.
Yeah. Sadly, those jokes are getting a lot harder to do now that they're all back.
I know.
Those jokes are getting a lot harder. Well.
Getting almost as hard as Minoru Suzuki's punches, but hey.
Oi.
Hey.
But actually, speaking of the Siege of Terror series, there was an article in the Warhammer community this week about the most evil Titan legions and knightly houses. I don't know if you saw this one.
I must have missed that. Let me guess, Legio Mortis is number 1.
Correct. And it mentions their zombie Titan tactic.
Hooray!
So it talks about that and has some really old artwork of
the Bane
some
Lords.
sort of... Oh, that's a Bane Lord, is it?
I think so, yeah.
I wasn't sure. Talks about Legio Kratos, which is a name I didn't know. So these guys, and I'll quote the article, the Legio Kratos were known for the unusual glee they took in wiping worlds they took clean of all life. They first developed a taste for planetary annihilation before rejoining the Imperium, when it locked horns with the Agrinium Convocation, a despotic regime that conquered dozens of worlds and whose brainwashed soldiers fought to the death. The Legion's solution against an implacable foe was to eradicate the biosphere of every planet in the Convocation, and they never looked back. This particularly thorough brand of carnage would continue on Talon in the immediate aftermath of the virus bombing that poisoned the surface of the planet.
Ah. The Imperium.
The Death Guard.
I was it sounds very inquisitorial. It's like, just virus bomb it. It'll be fine.
They don't just virus bomb it, they wipe out the biospheres.
Yeah, that's pretty much what a virus bomb does.
I knew it killed all life, but I didn't know if it killed the atmosphere and stuff too.
It kills. From what I recall, a virus bomb basically the virus basically eats everything biological on the planet, and the mass release of oxygen all at the same time basically causes the atmosphere to ignite. So basically turns the entire world into a big fireball.
From admittedly, go Lexicanum because they're actually half useful. Virus bombs were used. The Life Eater spreads across the entire surface in minutes, penetrates power armor, quickly rots, and breaks down anything of biological origin, reducing it to sludge. This releases tremendous amounts of flammable gas that can be ignited into a planet-wide firestorm. Yes, it does burn out the atmosphere as well. You are correct.
Yeah, because they have atmospheric incinerator torpedoes to sort of set it off. So the equivalent of a villain walking away from a load of spilled petrol and flicking a cigarette into it.
Yeah, so the Life Eater itself doesn't eat the atmosphere and burn the atmosphere out, but when you ignite the gas it releases, that burns the atmosphere out.
Bad times. Do you know, apparently, back in the Carboniferous period, which is, when sort of,
giant
I think that's
insects.
before there were vertebrates on land, and the atmosphere was so high in oxygen, and there was so much vegetation on land, there were periodically sort of, planetary firestorms. So that was just that was a standard Tuesday in the Carboniferous. Those are some hard bastard millipedes survived that.
Indeed. It then goes on to talk about Legio Vulcanum, the copy paste function as they call it. using dark technological rituals to divide the machine spirits of Titans and enshrining the fragments in new Titan chassis to replicate their powers.
That's heretical.
You've got Legio Mordaxis, how a rapidly liquefying Titan shell suggested it had once been in service to a loyalist legion. So pilfering defeated loyalist Titans and just nicking them.
Well, that's just logical. That's just like, great reuse of assets.
From other legions. I don't think the Mechanicus, Mechanicum and the Imperium would have looked so lightly on, hey, we want that God Machine back so we can rebuild it. Ours now, yoink. I don't think it would be quite so well looked upon.
No, but again, these are traitors, so it doesn't really matter.
I mean, yes. You've got House Divine that turned during Molech, which I think I've heard about, and House Gotrith. Once defenders of a planet lost during the Age of Strife, Gotrith became terribly jealous when their own populace began to celebrate the Emperor instead. Turning their rage at being usurped outwards, House Gotrith cut a bloody swathe across other human planets it was supposedly liberating. So when the heresy came, nothing really changed. They were already loving the carnage far too much.
But yeah, I was surprised they didn't mention that one particular Chaos Knight Freeblade thing. The one that had decorates his body and the skins of all the victim it's slain.
Oh, is that the one that the Flayed ones follow around?
Yeah, the one that's being worshipped by Necron Flayed ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they think it's actually the Flayer.
Yeah, maybe, I guess, because it's a Freeblade, they don't think it counts under a house or a legion. I guess, that's the best excuse I've got.
I guess, but it wouldn't be nice to have an honourable mention of, the one knight as being worshipped by Flayed ones.
I actually took inspiration for that for a particular scene in Twice Dead King. Only with a Seraph tech. I was the Necron Super Heavy Walker. Since we're not doing big spoilers this episode, I won't go into too much details, but I love that knight, and it wouldn't have been feasible to work that into a story, but I did something quite similar. And I love the idea of all the Flayed ones following it around like their big brother. Pretty cool.
Right, I think, looking at the clock, it might be worth getting into a few questions, since, well, we've been asking a lot of questions. It's only fair we answer a few ourselves, wouldn't you say, Ram?
Yeah, let me just bring up the questions I had to bring up again because due to some certain technical issues.
Apologies.
Right, let's have a look. Right, let's start with one I don't think, which I think the answer is, yeah, okay. Has any named character not survived the Rubicon Primaris? Everyone survived as far as I'm aware.
Everybody important survived.
Everyone non-important has survived as well. I mean, look at Lazarus.
Okay, everyone they've bothered to name, then.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. Question for Tactica. Do you believe that Ogres can and will get a model update?
It's weird because the Ogre's range is not mostly atrocious. The Thunder Tusk, the Mornfang Cavalry, the Beastclaw Raider side of the Ogre's range is pretty good. And a lot of the Gutbusters range is fine. Like, the Ogre Bulls are fine, the Iron Guts are okay. Things like the Yeti really need an update. They could probably do with a new Slaughtermaster, possibly a new, Cauldron. Not the mega one that uses a terrain piece, the one that gets dragged around, that Cauldron. And a lot of their lesser beasts could do with a look. But a lot of the Ogre Kingdom's range is okay, because a lot of it got redone around the time of either Beastclaw Raiders or the Ogre Kingdom's reboot in 8th Edition Fantasy, where they got the Iron Blaster, the Scrap Launcher. I think they got new Lead Belchers. There's an okay amount of okay-ish Ogre stuff. It could do with an update, but then so could a lot of the range. Most of Citizens of Sigmar say hi type thing.
I know what they definitely need to redo. Noblars. We need a new Noblars box set.
That would be, Noblars would definitely benefit, especially given that we've just seen the Hobgrots and all the other gobos that exist. I think it would be a good thing to do them. Just generally, I mean, the Grots in general need a redo. The Night Goblins are relatively old. Forest Goblins don't have an army anymore. So, yeah, I think Noblars and a few other bits.
40k Orcs need a good new Grots box set.
It's from 5th edition. The current Grots box is it's monopose, yeah, but it's from 5th edition.
Yeah, because are they Finecast or are they got classics with them?
They were never Finecast. They were invented before Finecast was, if I recall correctly.
Still need more Grots. What I would love, my dream box, would be a big box of Grots to put on vehicles, like Grot Riggers. Like,
hang on. Have we got Nate Crowley, or is Wib just infiltrated this podcast?
There are many opinions of that man, so I respect.
I'm sure they'll be glad to hear it.
We also need a box of Snotlings as well.
Like little swarm bases, like the equivalent of Scarabs and Rippers, but Snots.
Yeah, like they used to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I've still got a lot of those old metal Snotlings. Lovely things.
Pain in the arse to paint, though.
Yeah, terrible.
Right. Do blanks and pariahs exist in other species of the galaxy outside of humanity? Yes, they do. There's actually one that's mentioned in Pandorax. When Epimetheus is captured, one of the blanks that's described as being a reptilian species, so yes.
Are we sure it wasn't a mutant?
Well, if I recall, it was described as being a reptilian Xenos.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to double check because obviously scalies exist.
Yeah, but they'd still be classified as being mammalian, even though they do have reptilian traits. It'd be like, it's supposed to be more akin to being like, a reptile like mammal, as opposed to like a mammal like reptile kind of thing.
Okay.
Kind of like a Gorgonopsid in a way.
Yes, man.
Or a Dimetrodon. Yeah, I know my shit. Right. What happened with the Second War of Damnos?
The Ultramarines won. The end.
Ultramarines win, lol.
Yeah, it's like
Basically,
yeah, you're not allowed to defeat Cardiff Sicarius and the Ultramarines for long. So they went back. Calgar didn't that get made into a meme of Calgar picking up and throwing a pylon or some nonsense? I swear Alpha Buse.
Was that Damnos?
I swear Alpha Buse animated Calgar picking up a pylon and smashing it with it at some point.
He did do that, but I can't remember if that was Damnos or some other battle.
No, I'm not sure. And there was also a Catan Shard, I think, in the second run that got killed in the most embarrassing way possible.
Oh yeah, it got hit with a vortex grenade, didn't it?
Okay, maybe not that embarrassing. A vortex grenade is pretty good.
It just gets banished into the wall via vortex grenade. Oh god, I'm trying to find where it was. Oh no, it might have been Damnos because he led the reclamation of Damnos. So
yeah,
it might have been actually. Then in that case, yeah. Okay. Right.
Oh, I've got one. I went back to the previous episode, so we've got so little time for questions on that episode, and there's one here that I think we know the answer to, but I want to just bring it up. Are there any planets that constantly go back in and out of the warp a lot?
There was that one from Dawn of War 3. I've forgotten its name, but that was like the entire plot point. It's like that planet keeps coming out of the warp every 100 years or something. Was it Acheron?
Acheron sounds right. God, I'm going to go Dawn of War 3.
But they get known for there's about 3 or 4 different worlds named Acheron.
There are.
We know for a fact there's at least we got at least 2 different worlds named Medusa. One being homeworld of the Iron Hands, and the other one, being just a regular hive world where that's home to John Belisarius from the Farseer novel.
Yeah,
that was a good
Acheron,
novel.
I think, is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question for Tack. P-chem or O-chem, which was worse?
I'm a physicist, so I didn't really do that much organic chemistry. That refers P refers to physical and O to organic, by the way. I never did much organic chemistry. I had to do enough to pass my GCSE, but I never did A-level chemistry, and so I never really dove into organic chemistry. I did a lot more physical chemistry as part of my A-level and my degree. Particularly my degree did a lot of physical chem. So organic was worse because, I did a lot of physical chem and I actually didn't mind it, but no, never did any organic chem.
Fair enough. Question for me. How was your fossil that you call a computer still functional?
God knows.
Duct tape and luck.
God knows.
Orky know what's. It works because I believe it works.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Okay, we've got time for at least one more. Right. Let's go for a good one. Right.
Oh, I've got one if you're looking.
Go ahead.
Bit of an odd one. How does death keep people dead? Aren't there tons of warp or solely shenanigans for resurrection, i.e. can't a chaos god just pluck, say, Ferrus Manus' soul out and slap it into a new body and just be done with it? How do people stay dead?
Really good question.
Plot convenience, I suppose.
Because, we've got at least 2 different variants of a zombie plague. We've got Necron resurrection technology, Eldari spirit stone and potentially using that in pseudo-resurrection technology. You've got the Primaris organs that restart you after you die, resurrection technology. We've got Gilliman's resurrection technology. We've got
perpetuals.
We've got perpetuals. We've got soul shenanigans. Obviously I understand why the Imperium doesn't let people die, or just lets them stay dead because martyrs are more useful than living idiots. But, yeah, how does anybody important die and stay dead?
Even Makari. Wow, yeah. Thinking about it, there's not many people who can stay dead.
Apart from Ferrus Manus.
Yeah, super dead.
He's technically a saint in death, but he's not a living saint, I guess.
No. If you're a saint, you're dead. If you're a living saint, you're living.
Ish.
No, I'm just kidding.
Ish.
It's more complex than that. Big lore, big brain moment. You know who else is dead? Rogel Dawn.
Probably.
So yeah?
Probably.
No, in fairness, Conraco's had visions of him dying. There's 2 visions of him dying.
But also the Schrodinger's Primarch.
Yes. I still can't believe someone wrote that Death Watch book saying, yes, he is dead. Only his hand was recovered, but his entire body was recovered by the chief librarian. Here he is giving a speech in the present day. What? Sorry.
It's quite alright.
It's just... You think someone would be proofreading that or something, because it all happens in the span of literally 2 to 3 pages. Did the editors sort of clock off early on a Friday or something? I don't know. So, right, let's go for one more. Since psychics have become more numerous during the last days of the Dark Age of technology and the beginning of the Age of Strife, is it possible that the number of blanks has also increased as some sort of attempted counterbalance?
It's not impossible, but I'm going to go with no.
I'd say that the only way that number of blanks increases is due to natural population increases.
Yeah.
But more people existing means, a greater the chance of a blank being born.
Yeah, because being a blank is a genetic accident. It's a genetic. It's a genetic thing. Being a psyker, as far as I'm aware, is not genetic. It's random, or it's a random development that is not to do with your genetics. Sorry, I put that another way.
Well, you could argue it is genetic, considering, like, the Thousand Sons, they started developing psychic powers because of the genetic material of Magnus the Red.
Everyone who was picked to be a Thousand Son was already showing psychic potential. Arguably.
The chicken and the psychic egg there.
And God, he made a chicken joke about Magnus. Oh, God damn it. Don't even know if that was intentional, but that's good. Well done. Well done.
And on that
bombshell. Right.
On that eggshell, rather.
Nice. Okay, there we go. It's gone full circle.
Indeed.
Right, that brings us to the end of episode 134 of Adeptus Podcasts. Thank you very much to Nate Crowley for joining us and sharing your insights on all things Orc, Necron, and everything in between.
No pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all, and hopefully we'll have you back on in future. If you have any questions for Nate, please do leave them in the comments below. Nate has said to us he does try and watch some of the podcasts, which was quite humbling to hear. So he may be able to read the questions, and even if he doesn't reply to you that way, we can keep them in mind, maybe store them up for a future episode. And with that, I think I need to go get some dinner. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been Tactica Imperialis.
This has been Remleiz from 40k Theories.
It's been Nate Crowley from the Outer Darkness.
Have we been calling you Crowley when it should have been Crowley the entire time?
Oh, no, swear. I go both ways on it. It's, it's fine.
Phew. And on that, thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye.